Deputy.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It is April 12th, 2022 at 13:03. And it looks like we've got a couple people in the waiting room that are coming in right now. But I would like to call the Nevada Resilience Advisory Committee to order and ask the admin assistant to call the roll for us.
David Fogerson,
Present.
Billy Samuels,
Present.
Andy Ancho,
Present.
Roy
Present.
Anderson, Travis Anderson, Noah Boyer,
Present.
Elizabeth Breeden,
Present.
James Chrisley,
Present.
Jason Danon,
Here.
Colonel Constant, Bob Denhart,
Present.
Kelly Echeverria,
Present.
Andrea Esp,
Present.
Jenny Freeman,
Here.
Michael Heidemann,
Present.
Eric Holt,
Present.
Jeremy Hines, Graham Kent, Mary Ann LaFoon,
Here.
Dr. Dr. Chris Lake. I see that you're there. Carolyn Levering,
Here.
Ryan Miller,
Present.
Tennille Pereira, Matthew Peterson, Misty Robinson,
Present.
Sean Reimeyer, Rachel Skidmore, Corey Solferino,
Here.
Melinda Southard, Carrie Underwood, Mike Wilson, Stephanie Woodard, Bunny Bishop, Rebecca Bernard,
Present.
Melissa Friend,
Here.
Cheryl Gonzalez, Maura Hohenstein, Patricia Herzog, Casey, Selby Marks,
Here.
Catherine Nielsen, and for the record, Samantha Laddick. Here. Yeah, quorum.
Awesome, thank you, ma'am. Okay, item number 2 on the agenda, this is public comment, discussion only. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under this item of the agenda until the matter itself has been specifically included on the agenda as an item upon which action may be taken. Public comment may be limited to 3 minutes per person at discretion of chair. Comments will not be restricted based upon viewpoint. To provide testimony in this public period of public comment via telephone, call in anytime after 12:30 by that phone number there and hit *6 to unmute yourself. So if you're on the phone, *6 will unmute yourself. If you're on Zoom, just go ahead and raise your hand and we'll call on you in Zoom. So I'll start first on the telephone. Anyone on the telephone that has public comment, *6 to speak. And YouTube is just a couple of minutes behind us, so I'll just give that another second there. *6 to speak if you're on the telephone. Anyone in Zoom would like to speak? Any public comment from anyone on Zoom? Any public comment from anyone here in Carson City? You have one public comment, and I probably should have agendized this, and my dad will probably tell me that I should have done it later on, but I would like to introduce our new preparedness manager, Mike Xavier. Mike takes the position formerly held by John Backendall. He's in charge of planning, training, exercise, and operations for the division. This is his second week with the organization, and so hopefully we'll get him out. I believe we sent his bio out to everyone so you know who he is, but we'd like to get him more engaged with everyone, just the same way John was when he was in that role. So we welcome Mike to the position of preparedness manager. Any other public comment? Okay, seeing no public comment, we'll go to item number 3. This is approval of minutes, discussion, possible action. Committee will discuss and review the minutes from the February 22nd, 2022 committee meeting. That was a kind of cool meeting. We did meet on 2/22/22 at 1 o'clock, and I'm sure we were still here at 2 o'clock during that meeting as well. Committee will determine whether to approve the meeting minutes. Has anybody reviewed the meeting minutes that was in your packets? Anyone have any changes? Carolyn?
Hi, good afternoon, Chief. Under item 13, public comment from that meeting, I think the speech to text feature on the transcription was getting a little wonky. I wish we had UFC grants, but I'm pretty sure this was supposed to say UASI grants at the top.
Thank you.
And a few lines further down, feedback with FEMA's utilization of GDP as a feather. I might have said feature or something else, but I know I didn't describe it as a feather. So if we'll correct that to feature, that would be great.
Okay. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other corrections on the minutes?
Chief Noah Boyer here.
Yes, sir.
As much as it's really cool to be the Northern Nevada Federal Task Force, we have a bunch of federal task forces. So we're the Northern Nevada Bomb Squad Federal Task Force. And that's at the top under membership, just title.
Where are you looking there, sir?
On the very front where it says current voting membership and lists everyone and their organization.
Are you talking the minutes or are you talking the agenda, sir?
Yeah, that would be where the mistake is. It's on the agenda, not the minutes. My bad.
Okay, no, but we will correct that as well. Misty?
So on page 7, second paragraph, I did say that it was 1 trillion, however, it should be 1 billion.
Any other corrections, even though we wish Misty's correction was not had to be made? Is there a motion to accept the meeting minutes with the changes proposed by Carolyn and Misty?
Bob Denhart, so move.
Okay, a first by Bob. Do we have a second?
Kelly Echevarria, I'll second.
A second by Kelly. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. We'll move on to item number 4. This is a review of the Homeland Security Grant Program timelines, discussion only by Sue's Coyote. The committee will be providing the timeline of events for the application period of federal fiscal year 2022 Homeland Security Grant Programs. Timeline will outline the various steps necessary for applicants to submit and the state consolidate applications for submittal to the United States Department of Homeland Security. The original agenda did get sent out with one set of dates, and then a second one was sent out maybe 2 hours ago. And so Suze will talk about the differences between the two and what's going on with that. Suze?
Hi, Suze Coyote for the record. I don't have the original timeline. Here, no, I do. So there's a lot of dates on the original timeline that were pending or to be determined, and this establishes some of those dates. The timeline that you just received is very short. It doesn't look like the one that was in the original package. And it covers some key things. The first on the timeline is the release of the Homeland Security Grant Program FY22 application. We have not received the NOFO, but we've decided to open up the application beginning Monday so that you have time up until May 20th to get your application submitted in Zoom grants. So the state's Zoom grants application will be updated to reflect the information we have at this time for FY22. We submitted, or we disseminated bulletins last week regarding the key changes for fiscal year 22 in the Homeland Security Grant Program. And we're using that as our kind of guidance for ensuring that we're within the national priority areas for FY22. Yes. Okay, so the NOFO drop, we've been given a date of no later than May 13th of 2022. So it could show up earlier than that. But as I said before, we are releasing our application in Zoom grants, so you have some more time to get your information in advance of the NOFO. The closing of the Zoom grants application process is going to be May 20th, so that we have time internally to review those applications, put them in the proper forms, and get them vetted by the various committees. The NRAC review meeting will be May 31st. The funding committee meeting will be June 2nd, 2022. The Homeland Security Commission meeting will be June 3rd, 2022. Our grant needs to be submitted in grants.gov and ND grants by June 6th of 2022, so we can meet the deadline. All of the information that goes into your application goes into Zoom grants. After that entire compilation process, it goes into grants.gov for a high level compilation, but all of the detail of your applications will be entered into ND grants after that, and we're going to need some time to get that done. So the drop dead date is 6/13 to get all of that process completed. And that's all I have.
Perfect, thank you, ma'am. So obviously, I think we sent out some warning orders to everyone about this through the process. We've had some communications in the past that from the time that the federal government decides to give the funds to FEMA, they have 60 days to do the entire process. And the federal government's taken 30 days of it themselves to revamp some of their processes. So it shut us down to a 30-day timeline from when the notice of funding opportunity exists to when we have to have it in. So this whole meeting, we're kind of doing some things to talk about some ideas on how we might streamline that process for all of us and make sure that everyone still gets the opportunity to get their grants applications in and nobody gets left behind. So we'll make sure that this updated list of dates gets out to everyone. And it's really predicated on making sure we get all the right people in the meetings also on that last review. What we like to do is just like we did last year and the years in the past, NRAC gets the first right of review of all the grants. And we'll have probably the biggest deep dive into the grants at our level and take it to the funding committee for them to look at, and then take it to the Homeland Security Commission for the final say on the process back to Chief Samuels, myself as the UASI chair and the state administrative agent, and then staff inputs them. So that's kind of why we have to do this. We're trying to figure out, kind of build the plane as we're flying it because of the changes from the federal government. Jeannie, I see you got your hand up.
Thank you, Chief. I think it just needs to make sure that it's communicated to those who are going to be applying for the funding that they have all of their stuff in, because sometimes they submit their proposals for review and NRAC's and looking at them, and then they're like, well, we'll get that documentation submitted and stuff. I think they need to understand there is no timeline after this for them to get additional stuff in to support what that application is or what that approval is for funding from the NRAC and so forth, that it's super tight when it comes to it this year. The other side is I'm a little concerned. I see the timelines and I know what we have to do for posting for public meetings. And I think that that's where some of that timeline gets kind of crunched as well. But there's really no room for any kind of error on this. And so whatever we need to do to help support that push from DEM for people to understand that, please let us know so that we can make sure that that gets communicated across the board, because there's no wiggle room at all on this. Is there anything that's different on the Zoom grants from anything else that's been done with Zoom grants over the last year? Have there been any updates? Like if somebody did something in Zoom grants last year, is there any kind of profile updates or things like that that people can be working on and stuff during that time period as well?
So I think you had about 3 things there, Jeannie. So let me go to.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Let me make sure that we address all 3 of them. And the middle one's the easiest one. Yes, it's going to take all of us to make sure that we're working together. That's want to have a healthy discussion here on how we make sure that everyone's informed and all the decision-making process. That way we don't leave anybody behind. So the second one's the easy one. The first one was, I can't remember now. The third one, while you're thinking of the first one again, the third one was about any changes in Zoom grants. So let Susan answer that one while you think of what the first one was to remind us again.
Hi, Suze Coyote for the record. The changes in Zoom grants for the HSGP application will be simply the reflection of the key changes from the 2022, the bits of information that have been submitted so far. The base application information, as far as, are you talking about like the identifying information for?
Just, sometimes with applications like Zoom grants, there's updates or there's newer versions or something like that where things get a little wonky with the transition. So I'm just curious. I'm curious to see too how the word wonky comes out with the auto transition in the minutes. But it just, sometimes when there's upgrades to systems and things like that, that things get changed around, or there may be something that gets shifted. Is there something that somebody would need to be aware of?
Thanks, Dave. Hi, Suze Coyote for the record. So Dave just passed me a note under the table regarding the DUNS number. So last year we would have had the DUNS number. I believe we had both DUNS and UEI in there now. Grants.gov is only accepting a UEI, a unique entity identifier number now. So that would be a big change for folks if they don't have that already, if they haven't submitted for other grants. We sent a bulletin out on that last week that you go to sam.gov to get your UEI number, which is a replacement now on federal grant applications in place of the DUNS number. Thanks.
Okay, great. And then Chief, the Jeannie Freeman for the record, what I was remembering about the first one had to do with, in the past, people have had some time after their applications and after their presentations to NRAC to submit backup documentation or something like that. And I just making sure that they understand that there's really not time for that.
So, hi, I just had another note passed to me, lots of friendly, helpful tips here. But we'll be also issuing a procurement policy that's going to be a concept is a one pager, but it won't fit on one page. That simplifies the rules around procurement, clarifying the usage of 332 compared to 333 NRS 332 versus 333 and the requirements of 2 CFR and how all those things work together. So that will be also included in this, although no one will be doing their procurements in advance of getting a grant award anyway, but that will be additional information that will be included along with the state and federal assurances, et cetera, in the system. But that's post-award stuff, I believe.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And Sue, we're gonna try to do some more. In the past, staff kind of reviewed stuff after the INRAC meeting. We're gonna try to review stuff ahead of the INRAC meeting this year.
Correct. So, okay. So again, Sue's Coyote for the record. We will be, as the other benefit for us internally here of opening up the application now, it gives us the opportunity to review these projects as they come in. So we will not be correcting them after the meeting. We will be reviewing these, ensuring that they're in alignment with the information that we have and that they provide sufficient information and documentation in order to be reviewed in the first place. So we will be vetting, the grant staff will be vetting these before the committee will be vetting them to make sure that they're complete. And we will work with applicants to ensure that they are, right? So if we review a project and the justification isn't clear enough or enough details not provided, we will reach out to them and shape up that application before it goes to the committee.
Thank you, Suze. Next time I'll make sure I'm in person so I can pass you a note under the table.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Any other questions or feedback from anyone on the timeline? I know it's kind of a little different what we're trying to do this year, but we're trying to make sure that everyone has all the opportunity to get their projects in and staff has enough time to make sure we get it in as a state, given the compressed time frame that we've been given by the federal government.
Chief Jeannie Freeman for the record. Since we see that the NRAC review meeting date is on May 31st, those meetings typically are longer. Do we have an anticipated time of that meeting so that we who are here and on the committee can block off that time period now?
We'll probably start in the morning like we did last year. I think we booked out the day last year, but it only took us 4 hours to do it. And some of that's going to depend upon how the next agenda item goes, because I want to try to pull some of the stress of some of the project review from the committee for our standing projects. And so that kind of ties into how long that meeting will take and when it would start. But I would anticipate it'd be at least till lunch that day.
Okay, thank you.
Really quick, Chief Noah Boyer. So in years past, when the bomb squad has submitted our projects, Kelly would reach out to us afterwards and kind of work with our project to help fulfill some of those strategic capacities, whether it's the crowded venues or the election, or there's another one, the domestic terrorism type stuff. Kind of the same, is it going to be the same this year to where if we submit our project early, we can get some input from your office to see where our projects, where you would like us to push our projects to meet those 3% requirements?
Absolutely. That's what staff's going to be doing with that initial review. That used to happen kind of after INRAC, or kind of like right before. What we want to do is try to get all that done, so when INRAC votes on it, we have all that done and completed, and we're not having to make up some extra work after they've been voted upon. So that way everybody feels good about their vote is what we voted upon, and not project changes that come after approval.
Gotcha. So get them in early is what you're saying.
Yes, sir.
Got it.
Any other questions, Marianne? I see you unmuted. Did you have something? Okay, seeing no further questions, I'll close item number 4. Thank you, Suze. And we'll move to item number 5. This is the recommendations for federal fiscal year 2022 State Homeland Security Program project funding for the strategic priorities listed within the enterprise strategy. This is a discussion possible action. But given the short time frame for the State Homeland Security Grant Program, the committee will discuss proposals to recommend to the state administrative agent and the urban area administrator to approve the projects listed on page 6 within the Nevada Homeland Security Emergency Management Enterprise Strategic Priorities 2022-2024 as adopted by the Homeland Security Commission. The committee may vote on a final proposal. So if everyone remembers when we met in Vegas in person, which was a phenomenal chance for all of us to get together. So thank you guys all who came to that in-person meeting. We approved strategic priorities for the next 3 years. And in there, we listed strategic programs that without these strategic programs, we felt that the state lost capability. And these strategic programs are our 2 fusion centers, the Citizens Corps programs, the NIMS program, the CBRN E issue, operational communication, public information and warning, recovery and planning. And this really provides funding to Metro, to Nevada Division of Investigations, the Nevada State Police, Southern Nevada Citizens Emergency Response Team through the city of Las Vegas, Douglas County, Carson City, Washoe County, Elko, the DEM, and through our InTech program for some at NIMS as well. The CBRN for the Tyler Douglas Bomb Squad, the Elko Bomb Squad, the Consolidated Bomb Squad, Las Vegas Bomb Squad, Las Vegas Armor, the Rural Frontier Hazmat teams, the statewide interoperability coordinator at DEM, the emergency alerting system that's consolidated amongst all jurisdictions led by DEM now, some disaster recovery framework, and the preliminary disaster tools for DEM. I'd like to have kind of a discussion since we're opening applications early to try to save maybe some time at our next meeting. I think last year we just took them in one fell swoop and we just approved them all at once and asked people if they wanted to come or they had to come, but they could only give a 3-minute speech about why we wanted to fund their projects. So I'd like to have a group discussion and a motion if we can come to some consensus about if these are our projects that are our priorities that we've decided previously and have historically been funded. Is there a way that the committee will give Chief Samuels, myself, the permission to move forward on moving these projects through the process so we get them approved and funded? And I think we can have a discussion about, do we give them, I think last year we said that if they had up to 10% to what the prior year's budget was, we didn't call them out. We only asked for anything over 10%. So just want to have a discussion and then see if we can come up with some way to make that a little simpler for Billy and I to approve that process moving forward for those core capabilities that we know we have to maintain, the fusion centers, the CERT programs, NIMS, that kind of stuff. So all of them on the floor so we can have a healthy discussion about this. Jeannie?
Chris Lake, can you hear me?
Yes, Chris, go ahead.
I would agree if they're within 10% of the previous year, maybe we could put them on a consent agenda. So when those projects are approved, I don't know.
You're cutting in and out there, Chris.
I'm not sure if that's that would be one way to handle. If they're over the 10%, then just let them know they're expected to give the 3-minute talk on why.
You cutting it out there, but I think I got the gist of what you're saying is that if we do make a motion and we can have, if they're within 10%, the next meeting, we just do, they all get approved without having to have a presentation. If they're more than 10%, then they do have to give a short presentation on the why. Is that what you're, okay, get a thumbs up for me, Chris, if that's what your intent was.
Perfect, thanks.
Jeannie, you got your hand raised too?
Jeannie Freeman for the record. In theory, I don't have a concern with this, but I don't think that it should just be based on the 10%. I think that we've identified that these are the priorities, but I also think that it's more than looking at the budget to make sure that it's the 10%. It's also looking, if you and Chief Samuels are reviewing them, that you also are looking at the intent behind the application And if that's the case, if you have concern that the intent behind the application does not fall in line with what is there in addition to the 10%, that should then warrant them being brought to the committee for that justification. Does that make sense? I mean, I get a little concerned that there's potentially too much pressure on you and Chief Samuels to make the decision as to whether or not something fits within that within that justification. If that's something that you all want to try, then I support that. But I think it's more than just a budget. I think it's also about the intent. And you have to be able to look at that intent as well. And if it goes on a consent type of agenda, if that's something that's allowed, as Dr. Lake mentioned, I think there has to be the ability for members of NRAC to say, I have some question. I want to be able to ask a question. Can we pull that off of consent? Can those people be on standby, by Zoom or something like that, to be able to inquire? Because even though the ones that have been there for the longest time and been funded for the longest time, there's been questions from committee members. And I know that what this is, Dave, is that you're trying to get me to shut up at these meetings because I'm the one who questions everybody. And stuff, but ultimately I think that I don't want the pressure to just be on you and Chief Samuels. I think there has to be something other than just the budget point.
And I think you raised a pretty good item there, Jeannie, and that the review would have to be more than just budgetary. It has to make sure that it fits the mission that they've been doing. I'm looking to streamline our next meeting, that we take some of the weight out from the things that are the normal stuff we always know about. Intact's going to do their normal process. SNCTC is going to do their normal process. Carolyn's going to do her normal process for the CERT program. Mary Ann LaFoon's going to do her normal process. Instead of bringing all those back and having each one of them have to talk for 3 minutes, have a kind of a easy button for those groups and make it so that way we've already decided that your programs are important. We have to maintain them. As long as you stay within your scope of your program, your dollar amount of your program, then we can find an easier way to do it. And I love the idea of consent, but I know we do it at local government all the time. It's not something that we're comfortable with in these meetings. So we can still have it agendized on the next meeting, but I guess I'd be looking for that they've been vetted by us, so we don't have to sit and listen to and it sounds horrible the way I just said that. So that way we don't have to sit and listen to the 3-minute thing, because that makes it sound like it's horrible that we do that, but also trying to make sure that it's streamlined for everybody.
Yeah, and I think streamlining is always a great thing. Anytime you can make something smoother and quicker, it's better for everybody. Would the committee still have the ability to, even if they were approved and that's streamlined in that sense, would we still have the ability to see them all?
Absolutely. We can still send them out to everyone, so that way everyone gets a chance to see them. And we can throw that on the agenda, so that way we'll just remove, I guess what I'm looking for is removal of that 3-minute speech window, and just do it that we're calling you up because we have a question specific to your program, not to every program.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Hi,
Bob.
this is Mary.
Oh, hang on, Mary Ann.
LaFoon.
Go ahead, Mary Ann. We'll get to you next, Bob. Go ahead, Mary Ann.
Oh, what I was going to say, if you're going to do that, and even though it does make it easy, since I'm that would be for the easy button, and I would be at the meeting anyway, but I think anybody that we would be giving that easy button, even if we don't have to come and do the 3-minute talk, and I understand that, why do you want to keep hearing for us the same things over and over every year? And I understand that, but I think they still need to be available that day in case something were to come up or something new was seen when people were going over it, even if it is in a Zoom capability or something, where if there were questions, they could be questioned that day, or something could be piggybacked onto something else like we have had happen before. I just think that might be something to look at.
Completely agree with you, Mary Ann. Bob?
I was just going to kind of echo Jeannie's comments. I think the model here that we should be looking at is something similar to what happens with the Interim Finance Committee or the BOE, where a vetting takes place in advance. The people who do the vetting recommend certain ones to be heard, to be looked at a little bit closer by the committee as a whole, and then recommends passing the ones that were pretty, perfunctory or pretty self-explained. It sounds like that's kind of the direction that we're moving towards in this. And, I think that just makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Perfect, Bob. And I don't know if you're gonna call Billy Samuels or me LCB auditor versus GFO for those of in the state system that don't understand those two things, but we might arm wrestle on who's who. Carolyn?
Thanks, Chief. One question I have is this sounds like a good solution for the programs that we see year to year and sustain year to year. But every year we have a couple of projects that are innovative, new, different, not part of the norm. And of course, it's all depending on whether we have the funding available to entertain those concepts. But what's your proposal on handling something that may come forward that's not been funded previously, but still fits the criteria set forth in the strategic priorities? Is that something that you would insist on having a presentation for us to say? I know I'd like to see a presentation if it was something that we were considering. How would you want to handle that?
Absolutely, Carolyn. This is just the easy button for the recurring projects that we decided are the priorities, is my proposal to the group. Anybody has a new project would still have to come. I think last year we did recurring projects had 3 minutes, new projects had 5 minutes. So now we'd actually have some time to dive into those new projects to see what their proposals were and how it worked. And I think part of it also, I guess I was also looking at, if we open grant applications early, those existing projects know that they got the easy button, so they get their projects in, and we can kind of look at a dollar amount. So we have ahead of time that we got $1 million available, $2 million available for those people that are coming up with those new one-off projects. And then we'd hear from each project as a group, and we would rank and vet those just like we normally do. All we're doing is moving the recurring projects out of that vetting process.
Great. And you just reminded me when you talked about hitting the easy button. Suze, are we going to be able to copy last year's grant application into the new format and then make updates from there? Or are we going to have to start from scratch?
Hi, Suze Coyote for the record. You're going to have to start from scratch. There's not really a copy paste function. Some of the things are going to be different. My recommendation would be to, if you can, export your application from the previous year into another document and then use that to copy and paste into the fields, but not all the fields are going to be exactly the same.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, your lips are moving, but we can't hear you.
Any better?
There you go.
Okay. Turn, I guess now after hearing this is, in the past, we've sort of bartered and negotiated to get people to cut some, make room for a particular product or that we all felt we should fund. How would that be handled if we did give?
So you cut in and out there, Chris, but I think you're talking about how the normal process would go when we find that we need another $100,000, another $500,000 to fund all what we want to fund, and that give and take we do between the different programs. I think we still do that because if you remember last year, we had one agenda item was 3 minutes for all existing projects to talk about what they're going to do, and then we approved those existing projects. And then we had 5 minutes for all new projects. And then at that point, then we looked at the entire bank of things to see what we do. And even some of those existing projects did give up a little bit of money to make that work. And so I think we still do that threefold agenda process where these ones we're good with these programs. We hear these new programs, we vote, we vet them, we rank them, and then we have a final tally, and that would have the list of the new projects plus the current projects. So if we have to move money around between them, we can do that at that point.
Then even though we have the easy button for us, the that are applying for the grant still will have to show up to the meeting or be on the call.
Absolutely. They got to be on the meeting because one of us could pull and we want to talk about one of those projects. So they have to be at that meeting. I'm just looking at, there's 20 of those projects, and they're each taking 3 minutes to talk about, and then our normal process of changing between each project. Just trying to cut some time out to save time for us on the ones we already know about. Chris, could you try that one again?
Said, thank you. I support.
All through, I just made fun of Tim Robb the other day in a meeting. All through COVID, you've been using the Zoom and you still can't work the microphone correctly.
Sorts of problems, yeah.
Carolyn, you got your hand raised again?
Yeah, if there's no other questions or comments, I'll make a motion.
Okay. Is there any other question or comments, or everyone good with Carolyn trying to make a motion for us?
I'll second. This is Missy Robinson for the record.
Well, let's hear the motion first to make sure that we're all good with that.
I'm in a
Aye.
hurry. Come on, let's go.
I'm grateful at the implicit trust. Thank you for your trust. So I humbly move to allow administrative privileges to our chair and co-chair to vet the projects in advance of the next committee advisory meeting for consent agendized consideration with the ability to pull consent items out for additional discussion as needed, and also to ensure time and access for new project proposals to be presented for this advisory group's consideration.
Carolyn, can you repeat the motion for us? I don't think we got it.
No, that's not going to happen. But I'm sure there's going to be a lot of fun text to speech, speech to text translations.
Misty, or will you second that motion that Carolyn gave us?
I'll second it without repeating it.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? All in the favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Okay, motion carries. We go on to item number 6, and this is another one that we'd like some feedback on. This is cybersecurity grant and Homeland Security grant program discussion, possible action. The Department of Homeland Security cybersecurity grant will be released in the summer of 2022. The SHSP has no requirements to spend a portion of the state or urban area investment on cybersecurity programs. Committee will discuss the option allowing cybersecurity project to apply within the HSSP or consider pushing those towards a funding request in a new cybersecurity grant program when the notice of funding opportunity is released. Committee may vote to determine the appropriate funding stream for cybersecurity funding requests. We met in person. We talked about this one, and the inference we received from the federal government is that they were going to release the cybersecurity grant and Homeland Security grant at the same time. The latest knowledge we've gotten is that they're going to push the cybersecurity grant until this summer. And so there's some discussion at our last meeting about not using this state Homeland Security grant program for any cyber grants and push them all towards that bigger grant process. But now with the time difference and our current geopolitical tensions, I wanted to make sure that as a group, we talked about it to see if we wanted to still consider cyber grants on the state Homeland Security grant program side, or if the thought process of the group was to kick those down the road until that next grant program does come up. We do know it is funded and it is going to be put out, but we don't have all the details on it. So I want to make sure that since we talked about it one way last time, that we talk about it, see if we still want to kind of go down that road, or if we want to change paths to make sure that we're all on the same page and everything's daylighted on it. And Carolyn, you're up first.
I know you're going to be so sick of me soon. Do we know how much Congress has approved for funding for this program?
We don't know Nevada's share. We know that they've approved it for 3 years for all the states, but we don't know what Nevada's share is. And I think that's why I wanted to bring this back to maybe still allow some of the Homeland Security stuff, because That's the unknown. We could get $50,000. We could get $50 trillion like Misty had promised us in our last meeting.
Well, do we know if it's even formula funded or if it's competitive?
That part hasn't really been explained very well. I think there's going to be a component of both of those because there's a competitive part. Sounds like if it's multi-jurisdiction putting in for it. Nope, Misty, okay, that did get changed back. So it sounds like we will just get a straight state allocation. But Misty, if you know more, I'll let you talk.
So from what I heard back around March 8th, so there will be a baseline allocation plus a population-based allocation formula. 80% must be passed through local or to local entities, 25% must go to rural communities. Multi-entity grants can be made to groups of eligible entities. The last time they talked about this grant, they mentioned there would be no cost share for regional projects, but that was not mentioned the last time that I heard about it. So they may have decided to go against that. It just kind of depends on what the NOFO says. My question though is, has anybody heard whether or not there's still going to be a cybersecurity requirement in the SHSP grants?
Sue's Coyote for the record, there's no minimum requirement for cybersecurity in the FY22 HSGP, Homeland Security Grant.
Can be one of our investment justification that we can choose to spend money on, but there's no spending requirement for it. Misty, you're doing the Chris Lake.
Sorry. So I have a lot more information about this grant if you want me to go on with that, or if you want to go on with the questions first.
Why don't we hear what you know? Because it keeps going back and forth on what we all hear, and that's really what we're doing is the rumor mill control. So I'd love to hear what you've heard too.
Okay, so again from SLTTGCC. So annual funding FY22 is $200 million with 90% federal cost share. FY23 is $400 million with 80% federal cost share. FY24 is $300 million with 70% federal cost share. FY25 is $100 million with 60% federal cost share. Funds can be used to develop or revise cybersecurity plans, implement cybersecurity plans, and they recognize that it may take a long time to contract out. Grant administration is 5%. Address imminent threats, which would have to scrap a planned project, obviously, because you don't know when you're going to have an imminent threat. And you can fund any other appropriate activity determined by the secretary acting through the director, which provides some flexibility. Eligible entities must have a planning committee, which can be existing. I believe we do have an existing planning committee. Where does it say? So it has to be an eligible entity, local counties, if eligible entity is a state, representatives from varying densities. So I don't know what that meant. Public education has to be a part of the committee, and public health has to be a part of the committee. 50% of the members must have professional experience relating to cybersecurity or information technology. The roles of the planning committee must be development, implementation, and revision of cybersecurity plans, approval of cybersecurity plans, and assist with determination of effective funding priorities. The cybersecurity plan must include 16 cyber-specific elements, including a list of projects, description of state, local, tribal, territorial roles in overarching plan, assessment of capabilities, which is the 16 elements, resources and timeline for implementing plan, and metrics. I can talk to you about the goals and objectives as well. I have that on my phone. I took pictures of slides because they were not sharing these slides. So except for the public who's going to watch this live streamed on YouTube, you guys are the only ones who know this. So there are 4 objectives. One is to develop and establish appropriate governance structures, as well as plans to improve capabilities to respond to cybersecurity incidents and ensure continuity of operations. Objective 2 is for SLTT agencies understand their current cybersecurity posture and areas for improvement based on continuous testing, evaluation, and structured assessments. Objective 3 is to implement security protections commensurate with risk outcomes of objectives 1 and 2. Objective 4 is ensure organization personnel is appropriately trained in cybersecurity commensurate with responsibility. And there are some sub-objectives under there as well. So that's pretty much the gist of it. Like I said, this was given to us in March. So things may change by the time the NOFO comes out, but probably not likely. So that's about it.
Perfect, thank you. Carolyn, did you still have a follow-up with that? We've heard from Misty.
No, Misty, thank you for sharing that. That was incredible information. My thoughts on this are that we should allow applications to come through and be reviewed and discussed and considered. You know, by the time we get to the table, we may have more information about what to expect in the summer release. And we may have a compelling argument for the need to fund some projects in this current funding stream because of timing issues or whatever. So I wouldn't want to discard it, but and if nothing else, any applicants we do see, if we're not able to accommodate in this round of Homeland Security grant funding, they were going to be that much further ahead in the process for the summer release. So those are just kind of my thoughts on the discussion.
Perfect, thank you, Mammon.
So I may actually have some more information tomorrow. So because there's another working group meeting tomorrow that's been talking about this particular project. So we'll see. I haven't seen an agenda for tomorrow's meeting, so I'll find out.
Perfect. And I want to kind of pull this back in the agenda item that we're talking about isn't so much the grant itself, but last meeting we talked about this grant in pretty good detail and those components, but we also talked about not putting cyber grants in the Homeland Security side. So I want to make sure that we keep it to the agenda topic before I get in trouble. It always hurts when she doesn't smile when I make fun of her. Jeannie, do you have a question, and then we'll go to Bob?
Yeah, my thoughts is that the cybersecurity stuff has already been kind of identified as our priorities, and these are things that we have addressed and already been approving for years. So my thoughts would be is that we keep them in the Homeland Security grant, because this is the stuff that they're talking about coming out in the summer. That's for 3 years, but I don't want to lose some of the focus that we've been building with the cybersecurity and the Homeland Security grant. And I do know that they are expensive when those projects come in, but to take them out of what's been part of what we've been working on as a state and then try to put them back in later, I think could be potentially difficult. My thought would be that maybe it's new cybersecurity projects that we encourage to go for maybe more of that summer funding than coming in to be projects with the Homeland Security grant process. Just my thoughts.
Perfect, thank you, Jeannie. And I think last time when we were talking about was trying to find a way to get more of the Homeland Security funds out by diversifying our portfolio and letting those cyber things go. But it doesn't feel like a good fit to me anymore. I think that I'm agreeing with what Carolyn and you and Missy have said, is that we should allow everybody to apply and then we can vote from there. But Bob, go ahead, sir, and then we'll go back to Misty.
Yeah, as far as cyber security goes, as you can understand, that's something near and dear to my heart. And I want to make sure that it gets the attention and the funding that it needs. But I have to say, I've always felt a little odd having to judge between, say, a firewall and protective gear for law enforcement. That just does not seem like something that belongs on the same scale with each other. And so I've been pushing individually where I could to get separate funding stream for cyber on grants, and I'm thrilled that it's actually happening. My thought, my hope is that it turns into a continuing funding stream separate from but parallel to the Homeland Security grant funds, so we don't have to make those assessments of apples and oranges anymore. But for this year, since we're dealing with so many unknowns still, and the target is moving so much, I would just stress flexibility. I think leaving them into the stream for the Homeland Security Grant Fund at this moment seems like a good idea, just in case it comes out that we're getting 50K, which wouldn't fund much of anything at all. And then if it, by the time we get to that point, we should have a clearer picture, and we can make the more informed decision of separating them out or leaving them in, or reducing the amount that we're going to put to that so that we have more for others. The flexibility, I think, is what we really need to focus on right now.
And I think I would concur with that. I think that's the same thing as what Carolyn and Gene are saying, because that flexibility also gives those cyber actors a chance to refine that application for that second round when it gets bigger, with that bigger process. Because there's gonna be a lot more, right now for a normal cyber project in the Homeland Security grant process, we just go through OCDC for a quick review to make sure it meets all the guidelines. The cyber ones have to go through that bigger committee that we built last group. And so there's also gonna be robustness there for those folks that they have to deal with. Misty, and then we'll go to Noah.
So I would agree with all of what was said. I mean, I think that, so the cybersecurity grant is really, I think, it's not a lot of money. $1 billion is not a lot of money for 50 states. And they're really looking at these multi-jurisdictional projects is what it seems to me. And so I think that, for like statewide projects or regional projects, I think that that's what this cybersecurity grant would be best for. And then keep more of the local projects with the SHSP funds. So that would be what I would recommend or suggest, that we see some of these projects that are being done locally and that can be done quickly, that those be done with the SHSP funds, but the longer projects, these regional statewide projects, would be better done with the cybersecurity grant.
Perfect. Thank you, Misty. Noah?
So Missy, I'll have our cyber who run Jim Cox. He runs our cyber crimes task force here. So traditionally, he's come to this grant to help support our regional team when it comes to our ability to respond to internet crimes against children. And typically, this grant funds their main, training and equipment and server type stuff. I don't know, that's way out of my wheelhouse. And so I'll probably have Jim reach out to you, Misty, to see what kind of the best course of action is if the new cybersecurity, because learning through this process that cybersecurity doesn't encompass everything when it comes to computers, but truly like the security of our information type stuff. And Jim has always kind of been able to articulate both sides of it, but just to kind of get some direction on whether this cybersecurity grant is the right avenue for that, or whether, keeping that project here is the best course of action.
And no, I think that you just hit a pretty good point there that we need to remember, is that cybersecurity grant is for protecting our cyber systems. What you're talking about there, the internet crimes against children, that kind of stuff, is that Homeland Security threat that would come to us, because it isn't so much about protecting someone from getting in and screwing with your server system. It's your guys' ability to go find a bad guy that's doing something bad to people, whether it's human trafficking or the internet crimes against children. There's a divergence there that we'd have to make between the cybersecurity and what truly is Homeland Security stuff.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right, Dave. This is completely different.
So it sounds like we have some pretty good consensus on allowing cyber grants to apply for state Homeland Security grant process, and we vet them out of that process. Unless anybody is opposed to that, I'll accept a motion on that way. So that way we move forward when we send out the notices. So hopefully we can kick some money down the road to those bigger projects when they come up. But in the meantime, we gotta work with what we got. So is anybody willing to make a motion for where we want to go with that?
Jeannie Freeman, for the record, I make a motion to encourage cybersecurity, or not to encourage, but to allow cybersecurity applications to Homeland Security grant process.
Could be perfect. So we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Carolyn
Bob
Leverett,
Denhart, I'll second.
Carolyn, I'm gonna take Bob since he's the computer guy. So second by Bob. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you all. That was a good discussion. Item number 7, this is INRAC reappointment letters. The committee will be advised on the issuance of reappointment letters for current members of the committee. Members who do not wish to extend their service on the committee for the next 2-year period can contact the chair with a recommended replacement outside of the meeting. So one thing that we did when we were cleaning up this and the changes in staff we've had, we realized that nobody had been keeping track of the initial appointment dates and then the 2-year renewal letters. And so since everyone's appointed based upon the authority of the chief, effective, if some of the people just got on the group, we're gonna go with those notes because we've been keeping track about the last 18 months, but prior to that, we don't have the good data on that. So anybody that doesn't have a letter from me appointing the committee within the last 18 months, I'm gonna send you a new letter saying you're appointed to the committee for the next 2 years. Billy Samuels is on it for the next 10 and cannot get off of it at any point in time. So if anybody does not want to be reappointed to it, you don't have to speak out now in the public meeting, but just shoot me a note, say, hey, I want to step down, but I really recommend this person could take my place and speak for the industry, the trade that I represent. So everyone should be expecting to see those letters. I just wanted to daylight it so you weren't, what? Why am I getting this? We just want to make sure all the record keeping is in good shape and we're good moving forward. Any questions or discussions there? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna move on to item number 8. This is closing public comment, our second favorite agenda item. It's discussion only, no action may be taken upon a matter raised under the item of this agenda until the matter itself is specifically included on the agenda as an item upon which action may be taken. Public comments may be limited to 3 minutes per person. If you're on the phone, remember you gotta hit *6 to unmute yourself. Any public comment in Zoom land? If you're on the phone, *6 to unmute yourself. Any public comment on the telephone, *6 to unmute yourself. Any public comment from the room here in Carson? Okay, hearing no public comment and feeling that we've left it open long enough and anybody who's watching on YouTube would have the ability to hit *6 on their phones to talk. We'll go ahead and close public comments and we'll come to our favorite agenda item, number 9. I'll take a motion for adjournment, please.
Eric Holt, I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
First by Eric Holt, thank you. Second by Jeannie Freeman. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Awesome. Thank you guys all very much for the direction today for Billy and I appreciate it. Thank you.